Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that we officially announce this year's recipient of the Honorary Foreign Press Award. Throughout his entire career, Fareed Zakaria has been a beacon of excellence, emphasizing fact-checking and ethical reporting. He has devoted his career to educating his audience by providing insightful interpretations of global events that include important context and historical perspective. And I couldn't agree more, Fareed, with what you said about universities being a forum to exchange ideas, even ideas we don't agree with. Fareed is the host of Fareed Zakaria GPS on CNN, a columnist for The Washington Post, a best-selling author. His weekly program is a domestic and international affairs program that since its debut in 2008 has featured interviews with Barack Obama, Emmanuel Macron, Narendra Modi, Vladimir Putin, Benjamin Netanyahu, Condoleezza Rice, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and the Dalai Lama, to name just a few. Fareed's Global Briefing, a daily digital newsletter, is one of the most widely read CNN newsletters around the world. His column for The Washington Post remains one of the longest running for that newspaper. And he's also the author of 4 highly regarded New York Times bestselling books, with his latest being The 10 Lessons for a Post-Pandemic World on How the Pandemic Reshaped Our Society. So on behalf of the AFPC-USA, it's with great pleasure that I congratulate the 2023 Honorary Foreign Press Awardee, Fareed Zakaria. And please join me in welcoming Nancy to give Fareed the award.
It's a huge honor to be here, and I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be receiving this from the Foreign Press Journalists Association. It's a rare opportunity to thank so many people who try to help the world understand what is going on. I feel as though we are living in a time, this has been mentioned by many, many people, when the freedom of the press is in bad shape. And it's in bad shape for all kinds of complicated reasons. We can, I think Thanos and I are going to have a conversation after this, and I hope we can talk about that some more. But what I want to say is, at a time like that, it takes greater courage to just do the daily task of journalism. It's not just the heroism. It's not just the part about being in a war zone and enduring, a missile fire and bullets, being captured. All those things are extraordinary. And, having never reported from a war zone myself, I'm in awe of reporters who can do that. But what's striking to me is how the daily act of journalism has become something that requires a certain amount of courage, because you're going to be attacked. You might be attacked by your government. You might be attacked by very popular figures within the country. Those attacks might then lead to threats of violence against you. That kind of intimidation that is taking place almost every day is become something quite extraordinary. I give you an example I just read about in the last day or two. Somebody I know well, Robert Kagan, a columnist for The Washington Post, wrote a piece speculating on what might happen if Donald Trump were to refuse to abide by the results of the next election. In effect, try to seize power through the kind of judicial coup that, frankly, he attempted the last time around. And this writer, Kagan, argued, well, maybe the state governments need to resist that effort to engage in a kind of constitutional coup. Well, Senator J.D. Vance has announced that he is opening a federal investigation into treason against Robert Kagan. It's not entirely clear whether he can do that as a senator, but he's essentially asked the Department of Justice to show cause why this would not constitute treason and why they wouldn't engage in an investigation. Robert Kagan is now, having to hire security to protect himself and his family and his wife and his kids. And this is for writing an op-ed, right? This is not going into Afghanistan and into Taliban territory. It's not something you normally think of as requiring that you factor in, a budget for personal security when you write it. And that's the new danger, in a sense, to journalism, which is, I think, much more profound than the other ones, because the other ones we know about, and in some ways, we honor greatly and deeply the people who do it. We understand what it might take to protect against it. And generally speaking, you often find people united in trying to help journalists do their job in those situations. But what do you do when somebody who writes an op-ed, because it's something that a powerful senator disagrees with, is now facing death threats, now faces the circumstance where he has to worry about his own personal security? That's the new danger to freedom of the press. And it's not just a danger in the United States. It's a danger in India. It's a danger in Turkey. It's a danger in the Philippines. It's a danger in so many places that one always thought of as established democracies. India is a good example. As a country I grew up in. One of the great prides and joy of India was that despite the fact that it was a very poor country, it had been able to maintain a remarkably robust democracy. It, in fact, was sort of one of the great anomalies when political scientists studied democracy, that generally speaking, democracy was correlated with high income, high per capita GDP. But India was one of these great exceptions. And what was particularly exceptional in India was the freedom of press. Even when you had governments that were quite, how would one put it, were proto-authoritarian in some senses, Indira Gandhi's government in the 1970s, there was still a very robust free press that would take issue, that would argue against. And that, by the way, then gave strength to the other independent elements within society, like courts, like independent bureaucracies, because they each, in a sense, supported the other. And what you've been seeing in a place like India is the unraveling of that nexus. So the press becomes weaker, the judges become less independent, the bureaucrats become less willing to stand up to highly politicized directives, and the whole quality of democracy decays and erodes. And one piece of all this that remains within our power is the press and freedom of the press. We can't do a lot about judges who become too compliant. We can't do much about bureaucrats who cave. But the one area where we can shore things up, where we can try to make a difference, is press freedom, press independence, honoring journalists who do their jobs, honoring particularly ones who do their jobs in difficult and brave circumstances. And so listening to the stories of all the people here, I really feel as though this is much more about those people who are being honored. I'm delighted to be able to share in all this and to bask in their reflected glory, but the focus and the spotlight should be on all of you, frankly, everybody other than me who's been honored today, because you are, in your own way, the building blocks of this effort to shore up democracy. And it often seems like it's going very badly, but then things do turn. In India, when I was growing up, there was a period called the emergency, 18 months of martial law, essentially, when journalists were jailed. But things come back. The pendulum does swing, and you have the ability to move things for the better, to change the narrative, and it will change, because at the end of the day, I do think when you look at these societies all over the world, what you see is a much greater awareness in the public, a much greater empowerment of the public. And sometimes that leads to a certain kind of ugly majoritarianism, the kind we're seeing in the United States sometimes, in Turkey, in India, in the Philippines, where, when Duterte would jail journalists in the Philippines, it was often very popular because he would portray them as troublemakers. But the pendulum does swing, and over time, more and more
people are getting educated, more people want to live in open, free societies, the pendulum will swing back. I'm confident of this because at the end of the day, nobody really wants to live without their freedom. Desmond Tutu once said, "To be human is to be free." And I do believe that at the end of the day, there is a kind of elemental yearning that people have for that kind of freedom. And you are all helping make that kind of freedom possible day to day, doing the kinds of things you do. You know, journalists don't get paid like bankers. They don't get some of the kind of rewards that other professions have. But I've always thought that journalists have two great things going for them. The first is you really are doing something deeply important. You are engaged in the great issues of the day, the great struggles of the day, and you are pushing that moral arc of the universe, bending it toward justice. The second is it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's a profession where you are actually getting paid to do a lot of things that you would ordinarily do anyway. I remember when I was a young journalist, for the first time getting into a business class cabin. I was invited to some conference, and everybody else in the cabin opens their laptops and takes out, pulls up their Excel spreadsheets. And I had a copy of Foreign Affairs and The Economist and, a couple of other things. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm doing my work, they're doing theirs. But the dirty little secret is I'd be reading the stuff even if nobody was paying me to do it. So with that, thank you again very much. I want to end with just one thought, which is television journalism in particular really is an extraordinary team enterprise. And the person in front of the camera does get too much credit for it. I'm not, I don't lie awake at nights worrying about this inequity, but I do want to thank everybody on my team, many of whom are here. I see Tom Goldstone, my executive producer. I see Jonah Bader. I see Claire. I see Nida, Jessica, Tommy, Chris, who produces that great newsletter that everyone talked about, Emily Welch, who books everybody so that we actually have a show. And if I've forgotten anybody, I'm terribly sorry. But I do really want to say it's very hard to do the kind of television we do. We work very hard at it. We try to get it right. We are scrupulous about trying to be not just balanced, but intelligent, and make sure that we have our facts right. And to do all that, I've been very blessed to have a great team. Thank you all very much. I'm so sorry. This is so beautiful.
This is our 2023 winner, and I think nobody would question why. So I turn it over now to Thanos to have a conversation, and we thank you all for your patience and for your wonderful audience. Thank you.